opportunity to talk it through. A layout, if I could suggest, ask me a question, I'll respond, then ask you a question back, and we'll just go back and forth over that for about half an hour, shall we say, or if that works for you. And
yeah, sure. Do you want me to introduce myself to your audience, or do you want to start with that? I mean, I guess they're already familiar with you.
With you, I introduced them earlier, but you can make a brief introduction if you'd like. But
yeah, sure. No, I'm based. I guess it would be good for the context of why I'm interested in this kind of stuff and what I saw happen on the ground there. So I've been in China for 14 years. It's a place I've called home for quite a while, and I've been, I've seen the improvements on the ground here firsthand, and I've been fascinated by the how China is represented overseas, particularly from places like Australia, because the conversation usually happens in a very odd, hypocritical, kind of a tone deaf kind of a way. And I can expand on that later if we get a chance, but that's kind of besides the point. And other than that,
kind of have a conversation about is you put up a video that wasn't how it
yes,
happened.
I know. So were you going to let me do an introduction or not? Because I was going to explain why I'm interested in what happened on the ground, so people have a background context about why I feel strongly about what I saw you and Drew do there to the Chinese Australian community. So if you want, I can finish and then we can go.
The main reason the last stream was why you put up a video that
so exactly. So why I thought it was really important to call out what I saw happen. And I didn't make the video in its entirety, but I'm ready to defend the entire yes, but I actually asked them before I posted it. I asked them to add one more thing, so I'm ready to defend the entire video. So that's besides the point. But while I was posting about the coverage of China from Australia's perspective, I had a lot of Chinese Australian people reach out to me, and they were quite upset with the anti-China rhetoric, or more so the anti-Asian rhetoric or hate crimes from people who don't even necessarily like China. And I even had a live stream with one of the kids.
Except the video you put up that was doctored, and that honestly.
Yes. So the reason that video is really important for everybody to see is because I have 2-hour conversations with high school kids, also some of my fans' kids who are going through depression because of the stuff that Drew and you, as his accomplice now, put them through. And I'll explain why that is and why this video accurately depicts exactly what you and Drew did. So let's start going through the video.
You spliced in frames. Like, it literally doesn't have my watermark that you removed in the same area. I don't know how you can stand by this.
As soon as there was a translation shown on the screen for what the sign actually said, people should understand that additional context was added in. Because to this day, you and Drew can still refuse to tell your audience what that sign actually says. Yes, and also Drew's tweet was translated, so obviously there was overlays
that weren't there. You've literally just put in words that I didn't say and frames that aren't there.
So what's an example of words that you didn't say?
Right here. This is a frame that wasn't from my stream.
Words. Sorry, words. What words didn't you say?
You didn't make this video, and you're standing by a video to splice together frames and things that
you just made. You just asked a question. You said words were added in.
This is it. This is something that
what words were not your words?
Again, what I'm saying is you spliced this together.
No, what you just said was there were words that were not your words that were put in there. Which words?
I'm showing you the frames right in front of you.
Okay,
I don't know how to
tell me. So which words are not yours?
You have spliced together evidence, and you will semantically...
I'm sorry, the question... I'm going to stick by my question. What words are not your words?
Wake it up, everyone. Wake it up. If you have some other kind of conversation in a different area, you're going to have white knights interviewing. Wake it up. Your own. I'm interviewing this. You know the old trope. If someone comes like, "Come on, wake it up, everyone, wake it up." This. You know the old trope. If someone comes like, "Come on, wake it up, everyone, wake it up." Right here, side by side. I don't need to speak for it. Your video speaks for it. That you can't.
Are you going to answer the question?
I'm interviewing this. I'm letting the old trope. If someone comes like, I'm letting your video evidence speak for myself.
So now we played the video. So tell me which of those words are not yours.
I'm showing people exactly what they aren't. I don't
Okay.
need to
I don't
jump
know
in
how
your
much
lane,
more
and
clear I
no
can be.
one
So we see words on the screen right now, right? So which of those words are you saying none of those words? You didn't say any of those words. Is that what you're saying?
on the left is your doctored evidence, and the right is my stream. They don't match
I
up.
I I
You're
don't know how
sharing a
to
video with my
I
crop
don't know
out
how
and
to
the top
make it.
left,
I don't know how to
and
make it
you
much more.
throw
You
water out.
said there are words in there that you did not say. Which of those words did you not say?
See here, this entire frame here that says Chinese, English, Australian, Korean. These aren't
So
mine.
right here,
This,
that's not purporting to say that you said that. It says, and if you have some other kind of confrontation in a different area, which
no
you go
one
on to say,
comes in and
did you say those words?
behavior when you have
Huh.
a man. Are you saying
Let,
are your subtitles accurate? I'm sure your subtitles are accurate.
okay,
You
so
have
you did say
cropped
those
out
things. I just want to clear that out because in the beginning you said there were words
yes,
that were put in
tell
there that you
yourself
did
there's
not say.
some accuracy to them. Daniel, the question is here. The entire question is here. You have cropped in frames that I didn't have in my stream and said they're mine and tagged in New South Wales Police.
I'm
And you
very
want to
happy to get
question
that
whether
in a
these
moment, but at least
subtitles
I
are
want to establish because you made a claim that I think it was false just now. All of the words that were expressed in here were yours. So I want to start with that they
no,
were your
you
words.
see all of this frame that we're seeing here? This isn't mine. This is yours that you've
But the
clipped here.
voice, your
That is
voice,
exactly mine.
and all of the words that you said were your words, correct? I want the audience to understand that all those things, if in a
Why
different
would you,
area.
Daniel, why? Yes, okay, we've had this question
Okay,
like
good.
9 times around.
Perfect. So
Why
we
would you?
agree. You said all of those things. Now,
No, we don't,
what
Daniel.
these
We've
what
doctored
these
evidence.
people did was they put the context because right from the beginning of the video,
No,
people should
this is
understand
not
that
on
there's
context, Daniel. This is not
okay.
context.
Let me know when you're ready to hear my answer,
This
and
is
then I'll.
adding in things that aren't even something that's mine.
Okay, so let me know when you're ready to hear the answer, and not cut me off.
I did answer your question. You
No,
said
I
which
would like to
words were
answer without
you.
you cutting me off. So let me know when you're ready for that. Is that an invitation for me to go ahead? So I will go ahead, and hopefully you won't interrupt me this time. Right from the beginning of the video, when you see Drew's, or later in the video, you see Drew's tweet translated. Obviously, it means there are overlays. The other obvious giveaway is that there were accurate translations of what the sign really said, because you and Drew still refuse to this date to tell your audience that the sign said "F your mother." And you've been told multiple times and you refuse to tell your audience the full context, which is very important because in the video, when the people were yelling, that's what they were taking issue at. They didn't give a shit that it said Xi Jinping. They kept saying, that's a very rude word. You're talking about mothers. You're saying F your mother. But to this date, on your Twitter, not once, even though you've been told multiple times, that's what it said. You haven't informed your audience. So as soon as we saw that overlay, people should know, okay, there are overlays and additional context here because there are objective truths. That is the accurate translation, which you still refuse to tell your audience. So now my question for you is, why do you refuse to tell your audience that? You've been told by multiple people what the real translation is. Why are you refusing to tell your audience?
Who are you talking to? It's
I'm
like I
talking
was
to you.
Tucker Carlson. You're someone who has taken a video, spliced in your own frames, claimed that I've said them, tagged New South Wales Police,
You said all those things.
completely
You said all those
reframing it.
things. And Drew has involved the police and he has gotten people charged who you guys went there and instigated. You followed a man who was walking away only to moments later say to a woman who you had a camera in her face saying, why don't you just walk away? Obviously that doesn't work because we just saw you chasing a guy saying, wait, hold on a second, when he clearly said, no, I don't want to talk to you. So, I mean, like, how much more clear does it
That's
get
not
than
true.
this? So the first
I wouldn't
opening
describe
scene,
that as true. That when I was
you followed that man, right? That man who walked away, you followed him, correct?
I think you're coming into a different scene, and I live stream events and I talk to people, and I chased after him to say, "Hey, what's going on? What
Perfect.
are you upset about?" And I had a
Right.
chat with
So
him.
now when you had that camera in that woman's
Daniel,
face and you said all she had to
hold on.
do
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work
great, great, great. We started this journey with we'll just both ask each other a question. And I think I'm up to a count here of about 6 questions you've asked me.
Okay, ask a
Can we?
question.
Okay, great. Why in your video are there frames spliced in that aren't my stream? On mine is on the right at the same frame time. Yours is on the left. No watermark of mine. A frame that I didn't have there that you've spliced in. Why'd you do
That's
it?
context. Because we have to translate it, and we also have to add context. When you say any other area, you would have 1,000 white knights show up to protect people. We have to understand. Well, what is this area? This is a predominantly Chinese area you went to. This is very, very valuable context. So, and the idea of adding additional
Any
context
other
over top
area?
should have been very clear from the beginning. Because again, we added in the objective truths that you were refusing to tell your audience. So this is a more honest video than your original video. If you don't like it, I mean, all this is the truth. This is what the area is you're talking about. You said in any other area, while you were using your mouse to circle the faces of 2 Chinese people, ignoring the 2 white people on the left, you were circling their face with your cursor, singling out Chinese people and saying in any other neighborhood, people would have stopped this. And you don't stop for a minute to think, why are these people so upset at us? They're all telling us that this sign says F your mother. Maybe at that point you should have said, maybe I shouldn't believe Drew anymore. Maybe this really does say something way more vulgar than I was originally told. Now, I could have given you the benefit of the doubt in the beginning, but I've seen on Twitter, you have continually refused to tell your audience what the actual real translation is.
There's a great question around translation, which I stay away from, and that's a great point. I don't speak Mandarin, and I'll let other people post translations about that. There's a great point there.
So you refuse to update your audience on, because you've been told many times what it actually means, but you're continuing to talk.
Translated videos since. There's a great point. Translation is difficult. Totally get that point, and that's a discussion I stay well away from, and I've learned about that too. Context, commas.
No, it wasn't a discussion. It was, you didn't stay away from it. You did give a translation. You gave an inaccurate translation. And as soon as you learned that the translation might be different from that, you can't say, oh, I stay away from that. No, you didn't stay away from that. You put it out there. You put an inaccurate translation out there, and now it's your job, if you want to be an honorable person, to say, you know what, I got this one wrong. Actually, there's more to it. Particularly in the context of these people on the ground were telling you exactly that's the reason they were getting angry, and you're not telling your audience the very thing that they were saying they were getting upset about.
Yeah.
I mean,
Daniel, you probably made some great points here throughout this. I think a lot of my viewers will be certainly disappointed that you would have cut in what you call context. I call doctrine. This didn't happen. This is not your.
okay, we can agree to disagree on that. When I received the video, the only thing I asked them to add in was that context of what that neighborhood means. I told them to put that in, the overlay where it said 38% Chinese, because people have to understand, what is it you mean? What is it you mean when you say in a different neighborhood, in a different area, we would have had white knights to come and save the day, while you were circling Chinese people's faces and ignoring the white people in the frame? So that's my position on that. And this is why all of a sudden it starts looking really suspicious to me, why it starts looking a little bit dishonest. So when you're talking about dishonest cutting, I mean, this is actually a far more honest representation of what you guys were talking about, because it included all of these objective truths that you refused to include.
The objective truths are to add in context that isn't part of my stream. 32 different cuts, and you call it an objective truth, to remove not just my watermark, but add in photos of white people while talking about race. If you've watched any of my videos, you know this isn't about race. In this very stream, I talk to this isn't about race. And Daniel, you seem to be obsessed with this. This is about protest. And as I said that you cut out, this is about crowds.
What were you protesting there? What can I ask you? What was it you and Drew were going there to accomplish by putting these vulgarities up on this board and to display it specifically to a Chinese community? What was the goal? Because I mean, in the context of, if you're unhappy with a certain country, you usually go out and you protest in front of their embassy. So now you're taking this vulgarity.
One second. There's someone born in every minute. You are going to get, when you get a large crowded group of people, you're going to get all sorts that show up to them. This story isn't really about her, or isn't really about him. It's not about her. It's not about him. It's about how crowds react. That's the context that was removed.
And the context that followed up that was that in any other neighborhood, which would, of course, inevitably be a less Chinese neighborhood, you would have got a different reaction. Again, there's multiple layers of issues with that, because you're not actually respecting and listening to what the crowd says they're upset with. You let Drew and yourself leave there and talk about these people as if they were Chinese nationalists. They didn't care that it said Xi Jinping on it. They kept saying that that is rude. It's talking about mothers. It's F your mother. Like this is like, why do you want to show this to them and their kids in their neighborhood in their language, a language that you don't even speak? So that goes back to my question. What was the purpose? What do you think it will accomplish by putting vulgarities up on a board and going specifically to target Chinese communities, showing them these vulgarities in a language that you and Drew don't even speak?
I have to ask Drew, why did you feel the need to add in these guys? What? Because you're saying that you didn't
Yeah.
make
So
it,
I didn't
but
add
you
that, but I can
told them.
imagine that
Saying
I
this
can
to me.
imagine that.
Sorry,
Oh,
just
sorry. You
can
finish.
I,
You finish. Go ahead. Yeah.
you've said in the stream you didn't make it, but you told them to add it in.
No, I told them to
Why?
add the context of the 38% Chinese. That's the one I said. I said people need to understand when you're saying any other area. So we have to understand, what is this area? People need to understand the area that you went to was specifically one of the highest concentrations of Chinese Australians. That is extremely valuable context, because you can say it's not about race all you want, but when the actions contradict that, and when you went specifically to target Chinese people, specifically in their language with vulgarities, that is absolutely essential context. So I said that needs to be put in there. It's already established, very clear from early on in the video.
You created this. I'm just trying to work out, and you probably need to ask me. I'm happy to answer another one of your questions at this point, but just concluding there, you
Right.
created this. Okay.
Well, it's a video to take it from a
Make
30-minute video. It's turned into a 3-minute video for Twitter, and there's additional context included, including the pieces that you refuse to tell your audience. Yes, the audience needs to know that it was saying "F your mother." They need to know that, because you're
translation.
still.
You're right. There's a whole world to go into translation, and you're right. And at this point, you've repeated what the translation is, and you can repeat it in now if you'd like. I'm happy for you to open that up.
Well, what I'd like to know is why you like. I don't fully understand why, after you have been told multiple times that you were giving your audience an inaccurate translation, why you don't feel any sense of urgency to follow up an inaccuracy that you fed to your audience. Why do you feel no?
Please, you're here. I'm giving you the opportunity to open that up. You're here. This is it.
Yeah, so but I want to understand, why haven't you done that? Like, why do I have to be on here? Why does it have to come to me? Many people have already told you about this, and I think we agree that this is
Go ahead.
very,
Go ahead.
very
Go ahead.
important
This
context.
is there's a
So
whole
why?
world of translation.
So
You're right.
Drew, I don't think
It
Drew
is.
is ever. I don't think Drew is ever going to tell his audience the truth, and I don't have any faith in the fact that Drew could ever be self-reflective on his behavior. But I'm trying to figure out like how you can go along with this and say, I'm just going to leave it. I put an inaccurate translation out there. Multiple people have told me about this, and I'm still not providing this
If
update.
you feel I'm just leaving it, we can just have you not here. But I don't think that's helping anything. I think is as part of what I'm glad
So
that
my
you're asking
question
this
is, my
conversation.
question
This
is,
is part of
why did you
I am
why did you
answering.
leave it up until now?
Why didn't have you up until now? Well, what got my attention was when you posted a doctored video, and now we're here, and now you're, as you'd like, settling the story of whatever the translation is there, and that's the whole question around that. Can I come back to where I'm at with this video? You've said you didn't make it, but you told them what to put in.
When I saw that cut, yeah, because
Who made this?
there are Australian born Chinese who are really, really upset with people like Drew, and they feel that he is fueling Asian hate crimes. And if you think about it, it's logical. Now, the story that you and Drew are pushing on your Twitter timeline is that Chinese nationalists attack him, and he's getting in trouble because he insulted Xi Jinping, the leader of China. That's absolutely not what they were upset about. They told you to your faces what they were upset about. And so that's why it's really, really important for people to understand the full context of what you and Drew are doing here. You have robbed these people of their voice. You have made the rest of Australia think that Chinese Australian communities are infested with CCP apologists or Xi Jinping people who are loyal to Xi Jinping, when that is not what they told you. You went there with your camera to tell a story, and you facilitated Drew's fake story, his false story of these people that will have consequences for Chinese Australians. And I don't understand. I've already seen Drew. He does not have the ability to feel guilt for anything. But I'm just trying to find out how this ecosystem of somebody else like you who could go along with that, see what he's doing with that information when you saw firsthand This is not what happened. This is not what they said they were upset about. And you're comfortable with yourself about that. And now the only thing you're uncomfortable about is that this video, which you think is doctored, and which I'm saying it adds a lot of valuable
No, it is.
context about
It
what you
is.
guys
It
are
was.
really doing.
It was.
Fine. So
And
you're upset about a doctored video. Good. Fine. Let's say
okay,
that. Let's just say
okay.
it's a terrible
In the
video.
context of what you said,
Yeah, so that's fine. Let's say that. Why are you not outraged about how you and Drew are representing the situation that happened on the ground, which is completely different from reality? Why aren't you outraged about that?
because right now we have someone having a conversation, which you are, and I have imperfect conversations on my live streams. This is an imperfect conversation. It won't be perfect. I'm nowhere near as polished as you, sir. You're doing very well. I'll come away from this looking less, and I'm okay with that. But
That's not
we're
my
walking away from
intention. I
this.
really want to understand, please.
We're coming away from this where you've added what you feel is context, but is complete, not misconstruction. You're showing a stream where you're including my photo in the top right, and you're telling people what to create, and you have a media org that is doing something way more. You could have put up a correction, a retranslation, which I'm sure you did, but everything else in here, and tagging New South Wales Police as well.
That piece right there that you just went forward on, 38% Chinese, absolutely essential context, just as essential as telling people exactly what that sign said, that you went to a 38% Chinese Australian community and you did this targeting them. And now some of them are walking away with charges because you went there and you instigated them with vulgarities and you walked away from it misrepresenting what they told you on the ground. You did not report what you saw, and you have not held Drew accountable for what you have been a part of. You need to be holding him accountable, saying, hold on a second, Drew.
Why are you trying to speak for a racial group? I wouldn't
because you went
hesitate to suggest that I know what a racial
why are
group
you trying to speak to a racial
is.
group? You are the guys with Chinese boards speaking to Chinese people in a predominantly Chinese area, walking away calling them Chinese
Oh,
nationalists when that's not what they were. So you no, I didn't bring race into this. You guys brought race into this. This is a conversation about race now, and that's exactly why that picture needs to be up there. So that people need to understand. You literally said that in any other
race.
area you would have white
You
knights. So
literally
people need to
spliced in race,
understand
and you're
where
saying
you're
you're not
standing
talking
when you
about
say
race.
that.
I'm saying I don't know what Chinese people would think, and I wouldn't hesitate to suggest an entire race thinks a certain thing. You've literally told your editors to splice in race, and you're
Absolutely.
saying,
Yes, absolutely. People need to see what you're talking about when you're saying anybody in another area, you'd have 1,000 white knights, but not here. As you took your mouse and you circled the faces of two Chinese people, totally ignoring the white people who are in the frame on the left. So no, I think there is enough evidence to say they
I was
knew exactly
identifying
what you were
people who
doing.
got violent. And why? See, I didn't even see them necessarily as people because of their race in that. I identified them, as I said, because of their violence. People who got violent. And I questioned why a man and a child would become violent. I thought that to be absurd. You're
They told
identifying them
you.
as
They told you.
Chinese.
They told you. Well, you don't have to guess. They told you, and you refuse to tell your audience. They told
I
you to your
understand what you're
faces.
saying.
You have
Why
it on
identifying them
camera.
as Chinese?
You
But
have
are
it
they
on
just
camera.
people?
Them talking about you putting up these Chinese vulgarities in front of them and their children, talking about effing mothers, targeting them. That's what they were. I don't know why you're pretending like, I don't know why they were so upset. We just went there and put
Gangs of
swear words
people,
up in their
not their
language to
race.
show them and their kids. You
I know, but
know,
they're not their race first. They're just people, dude. They're not
they're
some
people who you
race before.
instigated, and they're people who told you a story which you refused to convey out, and you're allowing Drew to continue telling people a false story that the reason they're upset is because they were angry he insulted Xi Jinping and they're Chinese nationalists. That
I
is
hear the
not
points you're going for, but
that is
we're
not what they
talking
said.
past each other.
You're here
You've got a great
upset
point
about
about
what you
this.
think is a spliced video, which is additional context, but
No,
whatever.
it is. I just
Get as upset about it as you want. What I don't understand is why you're not upset about what you and Drew did there and what the story is coming out of the back end, considering that it does not match what you filmed.
I'm 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 just not American enough for this racially charged conversation that you want to make this, man. They're people,
It's you were
and they're
you were the
angry
guys
at
who
a
made this
protest.
racial.
That's
You
serve
were
you
the guys
well.
who made this racial.
You literally just said that you spliced in race into this because it's an important context, and I'm just
Yeah,
It's
there's a
me.
lot of important context that you refuse to tell your audience, and people need to know. People need to know that to this date, you refuse to tell your audience what it really said. They need to know that you're allowing Drew to go out and paint these people as Chinese nationalists when they told you clearly they were upset about the vulgar language that you were going there displaying in their community in their language. I mean, and you're sitting here talking to me, pretending like you don't know why were these people upset. Man, they
Yeah,
told you.
that's a great discussion to get in, but it's just turned into something a conversation about race and kind of an American news show. I feel like we're in the middle of Tucker Carlson right now, but that's
I
okay.
mean,
Okay.
I don't know. You know what? I'm gonna, and I
Uh,
feel bad kind of saying this because
yeah,
he's not
go.
here to defend himself. But Drew is a very manipulative person, and he manipulates a lot of people. I have demonstrated that on a number of occasions. I don't know if he's got you manipulated, but I don't understand how I'm okay with you being upset with this video. If you think that this is not called adding context and this is called splicing, get as angry as you want. But I just don't understand why you're not angry at Drew right now, which you were an accomplice to. You were an accomplice to what he was doing, slandering these people, misrepresenting what they were angry about, and contributing to anti-Asian hate crimes. As people in Australia think that Chinese Australian communities are infested with apologists for the CCP.
Infested? Why are you speaking in racial groups of the word
Because that
infestation?
you
What did
have
you?
because
What
this is
is
exactly
this?
how you painted it. This is exactly what you guys did.
No,
See,
no, your
look at
words,
you.
not mine.
Look at this passion.
You be
Look at this
responsible for your own
passion.
words. Nothing is
And you
infested
don't
in this community, mate. We might have some people that get angry. There might some people up there that get violent. These are regular people who've listened to Chinese propaganda and they've gone mad. That's all.
oh, oh,
That's
there
all.
we go.
They're not
See? You're
infested.
still
They're not
you're
infested.
still you're still refusing to listen to what these people told you to your camera, to your face, to Drew, that they were upset with the vulgarities. Are they upset with you showing them vulgarities because they listen to Chinese propaganda? Is that the only reason they would be ashamed? They would be angry at you showing vulgarities, saying "f your mother" to them and their children in their language? Because
No,
so you would need to listen
was
to
it a rude
Chinese
sign?
propaganda
Sure. If
first.
you're looking for an exception that it was a rude sign or obscene, yeah, absolutely. But then it's the response. Okay, it's a rude sign. Then what happens? Okay, it might be an obscene sign. There's the obscene signs that happen. There's discussions that can happen around that. The response to it, because I cover all sides of protest, is what happens then, and that's where the violence became the story, and that was tragic. That was terrible.
That's fine.
That was
I mean,
terrible.
that's fine. You can be upset that they took Drew's sign and threw it down to the ground. You can be upset by that all you want. That still does not excuse you and Drew from refusing to tell people what it was they were upset about and painting them as something that there was no evidence of. That's no excuse. You can be upset. That guy should not have grabbed you. I said it in a tweet to you. I said that guy should have never grabbed you from behind. That was wrong. And I said, but how about the
We've got some common ground. We've got some common ground, at least on that. The violence isn't going to help the debate, and there should be a debate about what should be acceptable in a free society, and we can go all through that. But we have some common ground when it comes to violence. You mentioned that you mentioned something about Drew, and I've just got a DM that he'd love to join this, but I'm not sure if you would. So I'll leave it to you if you're happy for him to come on.
I mean, I've seen what he does. He shouts. If he wants to join this, what he has to do first is he has to prove his accusations against me. He said that I'm paid by some sort of a billionaire fund. I've asked him multiple times where, like, can you even substantiate this even a little bit? It's like talking to an empty shell of a being. I've seen him yell in the parliamentary meeting before, saying that these people were funded by China without actually providing a single shred of evidence. It's absolutely useless. There's nothing that could get through to him. But I just wanted to understand from your perspective, like how you saw this and how you're okay with this. I'm okay with you being angry with the violence. I'm okay with you being angry with my video. I just think you should be angry at Drew for misrepresenting what this community said they were angry about. And
I wouldn't
that's what
expect
I
this
don't.
to go down the way it was. As I think you cut out of my stream, was I didn't expect anything but flyer campaigning in Eastwood. So for
Yeah,
this to kick off
you
more,
mentioned that in the
I
beginning.
was expecting.
I think
I know
he
you might not
knew.
be or not, but
I don't think you knew what you were walking into. I think Drew knew what he was doing. He sent a tweet out beforehand saying that I need more coverage for my campaign. And then he did this publicity stunt. I can't think of any logical reason why he would need to go to the Chinese community and tell them this. If you're upset with the Chinese government for something, you protest in front of the Chinese embassy, unless you're trying to implicate the people there.
that's a good
And
point.
that's obviously exactly what he was doing, because after they got angry, he wanted to funnel them into his pre-existing a goal to paint them as Chinese nationalists, apologists for the Chinese government. When I'm telling you, man, you just look at your footage that even you got. They were saying clearly what they were upset about, the vulgarities. And
No, okay, so the additional context you're suggesting there is that this protest in a residential community versus an embassy. Okay, I see. I can say that I
well,
can
not
see
necessarily about the institution. It's just about. I just want to understand what,
criticism of an
like, did he
institution,
think?
like
Did he really
residential
think he
area.
was going to go there and get cheered on? Like, did he think he's going to put this up and they were like, yeah, f this, f the CCP and all this kind of stuff, and or did he go there looking for a conflict? I mean, it looks like he didn't go there with honest intentions, because what he walked away with was a narrative that didn't match the reality on the ground. And that's all I'm saying. You can be upset. You can be upset at my video. You can be upset at the violence. I'm upset at the violence. Like I said, that guy shouldn't have grabbed you from behind. But I think that there's no way that excuses refusing to tell the audience what they were upset about. And then they can make up their mind for themselves, whether they can empathize with them, saying, you know what, I would have been pretty angry too, even though maybe I would have acted violently too, they might say. I don't know. But, we can say that the violence is wrong, but we still have to be honest about what was it that made them upset, and most certainly not paint them as Chinese nationalists, particularly in a rise in Asian hate crimes, when all of a sudden other Australians are going to think this community is full of people who are, because they've already got a negative opinion of China, right? That there are apologists for the Chinese regime or whatever it is. That's not. Like, what did you guys get out of this? Like, what? I mean, well, not you. I mean, I'm saying true. I think you got roped into this.
I cover protests. I generally cover protests, and Bennelong is an election in my local community. I'm gonna wind down where I'm at because cover protests. I'm ready to this kind of thing. Drew has just joined us. I'm just going to bring him on now, and look,
Daniel. I've been watching this. Okay, let me tell you what you're doing. You deliberately spliced material. You knew what you were doing. You knew it was disinformation. You weren't just trying to provide context, because you were actually
disinformation.
You were trying to
like your translation.
Daniel, let me finish first. You were trying to put words in Chris's mouth, because you were trying to pretend that you were the one who was trying to pretend that Chris had actually brought up the racial statistics. You were trying to pretend that he had put that in his own video.
Words.
So you were just providing context. You were trying to make it look like
words.
Chris, you were trying. Daniel, you were trying to make it appear that Chris had put up in his own video the racial statistics of the seat of Bennelong or whatever it is. You were trying to make it appear that Chris was the one who was bringing up, the racial ancestry of the people that we were talking about. You were making it like he was trying to. You were trying to say that he was honing in on the faces of the Chinese.
And yes, that's
what
I believe happened.
You were doing. You know what you were doing. You weren't just providing context, Daniel. You were deliberately trying to make it appear that Chris had actually brought up racial statistics in his stream about what happened. And when you've been confronted about this, you say, yes, I did it. You've already said in this stream that, yes, I did it. Yes, I told the people who made the video to put in this because it's context. We all know it's not context. Yep. You're actually trying to put words in Chris's mouth. You're trying to make it present that he was.
I'm sure it was just a random coincidence that you went with a Chinese sign to a Chinese community, and suddenly you
let me go onwards. That's one. And you say, yes, I did that because I'm providing context. And then what you do then is you actually then go, you try and twist the narrative. I've seen politicians do this, this is what politicians always do.
Get to the point.
I'm getting to the point. When you don't want to actually talk about the specifics here, because it's very clear that Chris has basically called you out. We've got proof that you've doctored a video here. You admit it, but what you're doing is what all shifty politicians do. You just try and shift the narrative. So you just go, oh, well, yes, I did it, but what about you guys? You guys are the racists. You guys are the disinformation.
I'm sure you would have been happy. I'm sure you would have been happy. Can I respond now? I'm sure.
I'll respond, and then I'm going to hand over to Daniel Drew. I'm going to mute you for a bit, Drew. Daniel, from my point of view, you did doctor a video, and I'll let you respond to the rest of Drew. Go. Go.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm sure that you would have loved if I didn't add the context of what the translation actually said, because right now you still refuse to tell your audience what it actually said. But I'm sorry. If you think that this video with additional context added in was wrong, I'm sorry. I think it's more inconvenient for you than anything else, because I'm telling the audience the things that they don't want to know. And it was no coincidence that you wrote a sign in Chinese with vulgarities talking about mothers being effed and going to a Chinese community. So people needed to understand that you went to a specific Chinese community.
Yes. Let me reply. I am an Australian. I went out to an ordinary suburb in an Australian city, Sydney, and I held up a sign that said, "Fuck Xi Jinping." We know that the literal translation of Kani Ma or whatever it is, it involves, it's basically equivalent of motherfucker in English. We know that's the literal translation. As many Chinese language speakers say, there is no actual direct literal equivalent of fuck you in Chinese. So the use of motherfucker in this context is basically the equivalent of fuck you. Now, let me tell you the political culture that I'm coming from. As an Australian, we can go down the street in any Australian. Let's say there's a political rally in Australia. You have a climate protest. I'm against the current government in Australia. Chris is actually a bit more conservative than me. I know you think that I'm the bane of all evil, Daniel, and you think that I'm some kind of far-right fascist. In fact, I actually have quite progressive views on a lot of domestic policy issues. I've got progressive views on China as well, because what I'm trying to do is support human rights. On the matter of the climate protests in Australia, I'm very in support of the environment. You go to these climate protests, you will see people hold up signs, and you'll see these everywhere at the climate protest. You'll see signs that say, "Fuck Scott Morrison." You'll see signs that say, "Fuck Dutton," the Conservative government in Australia. You will see people wearing shirts that say, "Fuck these politicians."
Would it say F their mother?
Oh, mate, of course. It gets worse, mate. In Australian politics, we use the CUNT word. In Australia, we use the CUNT word to mean mate in a lot of contexts. So you'll go down the street at one of these climate protests, and you'll see people calling Scott Morrison a bitch. You'll see people, using the CUNT word when it comes to very powerful politicians in Australia. This is Australian political culture. It's a larrikin political culture. People don't have much respect for politicians in our culture. We delight in using vulgarities. We delight in using coarse language. This is just, regular Australian political culture. And from my perspective, as a young 22-year-old who's running for politics, I've always delighted in standing up to the authorities. I often use satire and humor to advance a point. Multiple times I've been doing this. I mean, this is just Australian political culture. I was very inspired, for example, by, the Chasers War and everything, a great satirical TV show that I watched a lot when I was growing up. A lot of Australians did, where, stunts
Daniel, do you want to reply to
all
that?
that sort of stuff
I do.
would be part of it, So from my perspective, I'm an Australian. I'm running for office in Australia. I'm campaigning alongside a Tibetan candidate in the seat of Bennelong. I go to a random street, a main thoroughfare in Bennelong, where there are other politicians who are actually campaigning. So on the same street that night where we were campaigning, the Liberal Party candidate was campaigning. We had campaigners from the Labor Party candidate. It's not like I had actually, as your video makes it seem like me and Chris or whatever sat down and we Googled the racial statistics of every single suburb in Australia, and then based off some kind of mathematical analysis found the place to protest. No, we just went to a main thoroughfare in the seat that my candidate Kin Zum Dongdu, a Tibetan Australian woman, a refugee woman.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you're trying to convince your audience here that it was just coincidental that you wrote a sign in Chinese and you ended up in a predominantly Chinese neighborhood. That doesn't happen. You don't say, "I just went there. It was just random neighborhood. My sign by chance happened to be in Chinese. This happened to be a Chinese majority area." It doesn't happen. But I have one simple question. Why does that give you the right to paint when these people specifically told you what they were upset about? They told you they were upset about the vulgarities. They told you they were upset about the effing your mother. The woman kept screaming that back. You said F Xi Jinping, and they replied to you.我们可以用中文。如果你想用中文，我们可以用中文说话吧。你会说中文吗? No, you don't. So I'm in China. I speak Chinese. It might not be the best Chinese, but I understand. Yeah. So no, you don't tell me about what you don't tell that you don't tell me what that means. But why? That my main question is why?
Wow, Daniel has the secret knowledge of the Orient. Wow, we don't care, mate. We've got all these expats who go over to China.
Do you want to mute him for a second so I can get my question out? You want to mute him for a very simple question. Very simple question. Those people specifically told you what they were upset about. They were upset about the vulgarities. They were upset about the F your mother. We have the video. It's even in my clip. That was not audio that was put in by me. They said it specifically. You said it says F Xi Jinping. They said, no, it says mother. It says mother. They kept saying that. That's what they were upset about. Why do you get to ignore that and not tell your audience that and just say, oh, it's because they're CCP nationalists? What gives you the right? And do you? So that's the first question, and the second is, do you see the consequences?
One question at a time. One question at a time, Daniel. I'm going to let's let you reply.
Okay, let me just tell you what I saw on the ground there. Right, for example, particularly the man who was charged because he actually physically assaulted Chris. Chris was an independent filmmaker, a bystander, just filming. And this guy, for no reason whatsoever, came up behind him, put him in a bear hug, tried to crush his ribs, and tried to smash his camera. Very, very brutal violence. There's no explanation for that. There's no justification for that. No matter how vulgar a sign against a political leader, there's no justification for trying to assault a random bystander. Okay, that's number one. I mean, assault me if you're going to have to assault anyone. Don't assault a random cameraman. That's one thing that I'm wondering about. Now, going onwards from that, I was there on the ground, obviously. You weren't. So I saw, for example, the man who actually assaulted Chris, the main man who's been charged now, he was constantly saying, China does not have genocide. America has genocide. Xi Jinping does not have genocide. Xi Jinping does not have genocide. China does not have genocide. He said, fuck Australians, fuck that, all that sort of stuff. And he explicitly said China does not have genocide, America has genocide, etc. So you're trying to say that there was no political content to this whatsoever. It was just random people insulted by a sign that had swear words on it, as though if the sign had just said, let me ask you this, Daniel, right? Say the sign.
You didn't answer my question.
We'll let Daniel reply because I actually now want to reply.
I actually am very interested. I'm very interested. If the sign had
you didn't answer my question.
If the sign had just not had Xi Jinping's name on it, say the sign just said fuck you, basically in Chinese, would we have gotten the same response? Absolutely not. It was because Xi Jinping's name was on there, and a number of the people who assaulted us, especially the guy who was charged, he consistently brought up political points. He said that China does not have genocide, Xi Jinping does not have genocide, America has genocide. So it's very clear that we were being attacked because these people, especially the most violent people, the ones who actually charged with assault, they were trying to defend a foreign autocrat, a dictator with 1 million Muslims in concentration camps. We don't respect political leaders in Australia that much. We often say, fuck Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister. And so how much respect should I really have for a dictator that has 1 million Muslims in concentration camps when I don't have much respect for our democratically elected Prime Minister?
Let's let Daniel reply.
Yeah, no, I mean, you didn't answer my question. And you said that there's no explanation. There's no reason you can give for them doing what they did. But you did. You did give a reason. You said because they're Chinese nationalists, and you refused to tell the story of the people who said they were offended by those vulgarities. You were the one who was there yelling about genocide. And I've challenged you on those pieces of genocide evidence that you put out, and you go quiet when I talk about you sharing the story of Tursene Ziawaden, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of holes in the story, and you refuse to reply to it after that. But anyways, I still want an answer to my question. They told you why they were upset. So is your answer, is indirectly your answer, you think they're lying? That old lady who told you that is very rude language, you don't even want to tell your audience that that's what they gave as a reason, because you're just going to totally disregard it and call her a Chinese nationalist. Is that correct? That's what you did with this old lady telling you why she was upset.
Robert, I can't look into the souls and the hearts of every single person who opposes me and work out their motivations to a minute level. So I don't necessarily know what was in, the inner workings of that old lady's mind one day. Maybe she was actually insulted by the vulgarity, and in that case, then I actually feel a bit sorry about that. And if I had my time again, I actually wouldn't put "fuck you" on the sign. I would have just put "down with Xi Jinping" instead. But let me say this though, Daniel. I think that the main perpetrators there, the men who were actually most brutal, the men who were actually most violent, the guy who was actually charged, he was consistently making political points. He was saying China has no genocide, America has no genocide. He was personally defending Xi Jinping. And I think if the sign had just said "fuck you" in Chinese characters on it, I think most Chinese people walking past would have just laughed, because when we were standing there at first, this is the very interesting thing. For the first couple of minutes I stood there with that sign, most young people my age just laughed. They just took photos. They just laughed. They pointed to their friends, oh, there's the funny sign, just walked on. That was actually something I saw with my own eyes. It was only when these older guys, the little pinks showed up, the actual rabid nationalists who want to defend Xi Jinping personally, that's when the violence broke out. So maybe there was one or two people who were, really old people who were insulted by the use of a swear word on a sign. If that was the case, then I would personally apologize to any older ladies who feel, personally victimized by a swear word on a sign. But I think the main perpetrators of the violence that day were personally there. They were purposely willing to inflict violence simply because there was an insult towards Xi Jinping on that sign. And it's because that guy who was assaulting us, he's a direct supporter of the CCP. It's very clear. He wouldn't have tried to assault him. We wouldn't have tried to smash Chris's camera. I mean, why would it doesn't make sense. If he was just mad about an insult on a sign, why would he just try to smash Chris's camera? That doesn't make any sense.
You're saying that you can't see into these people's souls, and you can't figure. But then all of a sudden, you're saying you can see into these people's souls, and you know that there's, it's. I mean, you can't have both at the same time. You refuse to represent that woman's story. And I mean, what was your goal though? What was your goal going there with a sign? And I actually disagree with you. If you went as a white guy to this area and held up a sign that said "F you" in Chinese in their language, I'm pretty sure you're going to have people come up and say something to you as well. What was your goal? Like, what did you want to? What did you want to do?
I wasn't rocking up as a white guy to this Chinese suburb to insult Chinese people. I was standing there alongside my Taiwanese friends. I was standing there alongside my Tibetan friends. I was standing there alongside Hong Kongers and Chinese pro-democracy activists who were actually campaigning.
I've seen Max and the stuff he says.
It was the main thoroughfare of the seat that our candidate was contesting. As I said before, there was a Labor candidate handing out how to vote cards in that area. The Liberal candidate was handing out how to vote cards on that area. So it's totally legitimate to be in that area campaigning. And I think it's totally legitimate to insult an autocratic dictator who is committing terrible, terrible atrocities, terrible crimes against humanity as we speak. I think why should I have any respect for this dictator? Why
did you do it in Chinese?
Sorry, what would you say?
Why did you do it in Chinese?
Why did I do it in Chinese? Yeah. Well, I didn't actually write the sign. It was our Taiwanese friend who wrote the sign.
Yeah, you decided to hold it up. Why did you want it? Why did you want to hold up the sign in Chinese? I mean, you were the one who was representing the sign. Why Chinese?
Why can't I hold up a sign in Chinese that says "fuck Xi Jinping"?
No, why can't you? Yeah, but what's the reason? What's the motive? Why do it in Chinese language? That's not your.
Because I think anyone who's supporting a brutal dictator with 1 million Muslims in concentration camps is personally quite immoral.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. So you went there looking for supporters of the CCP, and
no, I was looking there to support Chinese pro-democracy people in the community, because this is the problem, Daniel. People like yourself want to collapse the distinctions between all Chinese Australians, and you want to pretend that all Chinese Australians support the CCP, and you're trying to.
That's absolutely not the truth. That's the whole point. You can't go. You can't go there. Even somebody who hates the CCP in that community, what are they going to get from you going there saying Xi Jinping, F your mother in this language? Because it does look like exactly what you said in the beginning, that Chinese people shouldn't be supporting this person. It was a witch hunt, and even somebody who's against the CCP, even somebody who's against the CCP would say, "Why do you have to come here and tell this to me?"
No, Daniel. Actually, straight after I was attacked, when the police were holding people apart, there were actually multiple Chinese, Taiwanese, and Hong Kongers who came up to me and said personally, "Thank you for doing this, Drew. I support what you are doing. I wish I could do what you're doing, but we are scared." So there are all these Chinese Australians who want to protest against the CCP, and they can't do it because they know that they'll face a reaction like this. They know that they'll get bashed by little pinks, and they're actually very thankful that someone is willing to go out there and doesn't care if the little pinks will try and bash them. I'm willing to get beaten up, Daniel. I'm willing to get beaten up because I believe.
Guys, I got to jump in at this point. What does little pinks mean? Now we're learning this. Is this a racial slur?
Ethno-nationalist, Chinese fascist, basically.
Okay.
So you went there. So you went there. You did go there knowing that you were.
Guys. I think I can try and chime into this, and there's a lot of issues here. Drew has said that if he had his way again, he would have written the sign differently, and he recognized that it was offensive to people. Great. I'm looking at it in hindsight now.
Well, I personally wouldn't. But if a Chinese person or a Hong Konger wanted to put up a sign that said "fuck Xi Jinping," I wouldn't try and stop them because that's their right. So that's
the journey that we have. The debate here in Australia is that we have offensive signs at offensive protests. This does happen, and even sometimes in residential areas. If there's anything that I'm qualified and an expert on, it's at protests in Australia, and we have some rowdy ones sometimes. We have some very offensive ones. We have some offensive protests here with offensive signs that are offensive. And we go through that whole journey of, is it okay to have offensive speech in public? And this is very different from other places in the world where we actually say, yes, it is, even sometimes needing police protection. And that's what it seems like a lot of this comes down to. I've got some complaints with Daniel about some other things, but that is the core of what this is. And Drew said something I wanted to chime in before I turned it back to Daniel and say, freedom of speech here is different in Australia. Can you recognize that offensive signs here are often tolerated and protected, not just by law, but by police and even socially? We accept speech we hate sometimes because the alternative is far worse. Can you recognize that?
Right. Yes, I can recognize that there's all kinds of colorful protests available. Do you recognize that when you went in there and you saw a variety of people who you think were supporters of the CCP or whatever it is, and people who were offended, who said they were offended by the offensive language, but you came out of it only talking about the first of all, not giving the full translation for what the sign said, not representing the people who said that they were offended by the language, and just painting it as these were a bunch of people who were CCP apologists. Do you see the implications for the Chinese community and with Asian hate crimes when everybody else believes that these places are full of these kinds of people? And that was what it all boiled down to. Because I noticed now your videos, Drew, your new videos, you're not including the angles where it shows the full sign. But more importantly, you're taking out all of the pieces where you kept saying, hit me, come and hit me. I'm not a coward.
No, I'm not taking that out. I stand by it. As I said literally 5 minutes ago on this podcast, if someone wants to hit me for peacefully protesting in Australia, go ahead and do it. I'm not scared about being bashed. I'm willing to put I'm willing to put myself on the line there. I don't care. That's what I'm willing to do.
And by demonstrating that, you're actively telling people to hit you, to engage in a
conflict.
I'm
not actively. No, let me tell you, Daniel. They went to hit me, and then I said, if you're going to hit me, go ahead.
The guy who had his hands in his pocket. The guy who had his hands in his pocket.
No, Daniel. When I said go ahead and hit me, that was after they had already put Chris in a bed hold and tried to fucking crush his ribs and smash his camera. And it was also after they tried to smash the sign, and they also got into my space, and they kept on flinching like they're about to hit me, like that. And then at that point, I said, okay, go ahead and hit me. I'm not scared. And I put my hands behind my back to demonstrate I was peaceful. And I said, I'm willing to be hurt in the process of, living out my beliefs. So I don't understand what you think I'm hiding here.
Well, I don't understand why you have to take that piece out. Also, I mean, it seems very clear that you went there for it.
It's what do you mean? I pinned it to the top of my.
Hold on, Drew. If I can comment on taking pieces out. If we're going to talk about deceptive video edits, Daniel, we can't forget that I regard
we've gone over that.
Of mine as deceptive. So if we're going to talk about deceptive video editing, as far as Drew, if I can, I'm sorry, I've got to comment on when it comes to as a victim of deceptive video editing. I've got to say, in terms of deceptive video editing, there's one person who's done the worst of it. And I recognize you've got claims otherwise, but there's only one person that I think is the worst in this one.
What did you mean when you said
response back to you?
What did you mean then? Let's set this to bed. What did you mean then when you said if in any other area you would have had 1,000 white knights come, but not here while you circled the faces of 2 Chinese people? What did you mean? What did you mean by that?
In your translation that there's 1,000 white knights. You're going to have white knights in a different area. And here you need to be culturally understanding, maybe, that the definition of white knights here, again, it's not about race. It's not about race. It's not about race. It's not about race. It's not about race.
So what is it about? When you said
jumping to a white knight is a reference to a very old medieval idea of someone who charges into something and says a savior. It's not about race. But it seems like everything that you're having to say tonight, Daniel, is about race.
That's exactly why. No, this is exactly why I asked you the question. It's a very simple question. What did you mean then in other areas when you were standing in a predominantly Chinese area and you were using your cursor to circle the Chinese faces in the crowd and leaving out everybody else? What did you mean? Can you explain that to me then? Because I think that was an accurate representation of it. No,
you're obsessed with race.
You're the one who went to a predominantly Chinese area with a Chinese sign looking for Chinese nationalists.
Sydney in Australia.
And it was just coincidental that you had a Chinese sign with you. None of even, if anybody wants to believe this, that you just coincidentally had a Chinese sign that happened to be coincidentally in a predominantly Chinese neighborhood. I don't know who you're.
I'm not saying it's
you're just saying it's just a.
No, I'm saying
you were intentionally targeting the Chinese community.
Let me ask you a question, Daniel. Eastwood is a suburb of Sydney, correct? And Sydney is a city in Australia, correct?
And
I held a protest sign in the middle of Sydney as an Australian political candidate. Please explain to me.
So just coincidentally, the area of Sydney that was predominantly Chinese holding a Chinese sign. Coincidentally.
Not coincidentally.
So the two things are connected.
My candidate Kinzon Dongdu is running in the seat of Bennelong, which covers the area, and this is the main thoroughfare of the area. And as I explained, there were Labour and Liberal politicians that night campaigning in the exact same street.
And so the purpose for the Chinese sign was to
communicate our opposition to the CCP on the street.
Okay, and then when
Daniel,
you
I gotta jump in and explain this, dude.
I know what a white knight is. I know what a white. You don't have to explain what a white knight is.
If you know what a white knight is, why are you trying to paint this as about race, throwing up ethnicity about it, and trying to chime on it again, throwing up this photo? You said you put this photo in. If you know what this is,
not that one. The next one.
Why are you saying you know what a white knight is, dude?
We can put this to bed with a very the people who put that in believe that you were using innuendos.
You did.
You just tell us.
You said you did, not the people.
I do
you
too.
Said that you did.
I do too. So correct me. Why? What did you mean by when you said a different area and you used your cursor to circle Chinese-only faces? Was this just a coincidence also? Because there's a lot of coincidences happening.
These are people getting violent in a crowd. Daniel,
what did the guy do with
the
guy holding the kid? The guy holding the kid, what did he do?
He hit the sign. You can see it on the other angle.
What are you doing holding a toddler getting involved in a violent confrontation? Again, this was not about race. This was about a guy getting violent. Not all roads lead to race, Stan, please.
Look at the video I pinned to the top of my Twitter. Look, the video I pinned to the top of my Twitter shows the man who, it was actually quite bizarre. He was holding a baby in one arm, and then in the other arm, he hit the sign. It's quite interesting. Like, if you've got a baby in your arm, why would you get involved in a political demonstration and be violent?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an area with kids around and you're putting up signs with vulgarities, I mean, why would you do that too? Saying "F your mother" in front of kids.
Yeah, 6-month-old baby can read.
There were other kids there too. There were other kids around. So I'm happy that you appreciate. I'm happy that you appreciate if there were kids who could read it around, that you would understand that would be offensive, because indeed there were. So yeah, I'm happy we can agree.
Show that to me, Daniel.
You want to see the kids? Like for example, the one who you guys had a camera in her face and she kept saying, "Don't film me."
Well, I didn't have a camera in the face. I wasn't filming anything.
I'm the camera guy. Throw me under the bus. I'm the camera guy. We're going to talk about filming. That's all me.
So she had a kid with her who would definitely be able to read by that age, and she kept saying, "Don't film me." I mean, there were kids around. So
if we're going to talk about cameras, I'm going to.
Okay, all I'm saying is I didn't
have that lady before. Just Drew, please. That was before any confrontation began. She'd seen that I was trying to get some B-roll of Eastwood Plaza. I was getting down low and having a look at some of the signs that Drew was carrying, because I thought it was just going to be a campaigning event. And this lady, which I explained in a long 30-minute video, I go step by step, absolutely loses and starts grabbing at my camera and grabbing my arm and trying to remove my cameras from me. This is absurd. None of Drew's signs have been rolled out. This was simply me holding a camera in public. And I know, Daniel, you're going to jump and say this is about race again, about something about...
No. I don't. I just like, are you talking about the frame when she put her hand in front of your camera and said, no, don't film me?
That was before any poster was up.
This is again not about race. This is about a person uncomfortable.
I didn't say anything about race just now.
But in a public space sure. This is about a person being uncomfortable about being filmed, and this happens of all parts of Sydney. This is a regular thing that happens. This is people sometimes.
Okay, we're kind of going around in circles. The point was there were kids in the area that could read it, but I'm glad that you can understand why. If you have to argue that if there were kids around that could read that, you can understand the problem with that. So now you can begin to start to get to the first steps of understanding why it's problematic to put signs like that up in a Chinese community targeting them. But
no one was targeted other than Xi Jinping. No one was targeted other than Xi Jinping.
And Xi Jinping wasn't there, so your message was there in Chinese, the Chinese people with vulgarities.
The only people that
can you translate it in full? Why are you still refusing to translate it in full?
Daniel, you know this as well as I do. There is no literal equivalent of "fuck you" in the Chinese language, so this is the direct approximation, basically.
All right. So it said, Xi Jinping, F your mother. And
which is
you
the
just want to
equivalent of "fuck you" in the English language.
It's actually much worse than that. It's actually much worse than that. And I think unless you don't believe the people, And there were so many people there who told you exactly what they were upset about, and you're discounting them. You didn't tell their part of the story. You only said that there were Chinese nationalists, which has implications to the community.
The person who assaulted Chris and the person who assaulted me was a Chinese nationalist. That is absolutely 100% clear.
Yeah, and actually, don't make this about him bringing up all these genocide camps and all this stuff. You were doing that, and people were responding to it because there's a lot of other people. There's a lot of other people who don't believe that bullshit either. So there's a lot of other people who don't believe that bullshit, and they don't necessarily need to be pro-China.
Sure, Daniel, every single one of my Uyghur friends in Australia has a family member, like a direct family member in the concentration camps.
I don't believe you.
What'd you say?
I don't believe you.
I don't care whether you don't believe me, because you literally have a brewery in China that is promoted by Chinese state media, and that's why you do all this.
You lie, and I can demonstrate it now. I can demonstrate it right now. You said I'm paid by a billionaire organization in the U.S. Where did that claim come from? And support it right now and show me that you're an honest person.
That one. Oh, well, that particular one, it turns out that there's some kind of billionaire in America who funds like the Grey Zone and all these kind of fucking tanky outlets. I just assume you must be one of those.
Oh, so you were wrong.
Not directly the Chinese
you put it out there without doing any due diligence, and you just put it out there, a claim which you have yet to correct. So you lied.
Daniel, I'm sure there's some credibility behind claims which aren't here, but
Daniel, you're either funded by the Chinese government directly.
Drew, if I can.
Okay, so how am I funded? How am I? No, let's go through this.
No, I'm just going to. In terms of this was huge for me, and it sets credibility here. It really does set credibility here of this. To misunderstand fundamentally white knight, that's important. And to add frames to my video that you feel are adding context, that's really big. We understand the world through cameras. We really do. Like we are at the moment, we're trying to understand it. And the responsibility of that truth is heavy. And Daniel, I know you want to respond there, and I'll let you go here, but it is a heavy responsibility when video editing, just as it was for Drew of what happened at the scene, just as it is for you with what you did to the footage as well.
Let's not deflect off of what just happened there. You lied, Drew. You lied.
No, right? I didn't lie, Daniel. Daniel, where does your funding come from? Please explain. I mean, at the very least, we know that Chinese state media promote your businesses in China.
Step by step, one at a time. You lied about my funding from this billionaire organization in the U.S.
Oh, wrong.
Oh,
Daniel, at the very least.
No. Let's first one step at a time. So, like, are you abandoning that claim now? And why are you abandoning it?
I'm not abandoning it. I know that you're funded by terrible sources, whether it's
one
directly Chinese government or it's pro-Chinese government sources.
Time. One step at a time. And how do you know that? Tell us.
Daniel, it's very obvious. At the very least, as I've explained, Chinese state media have directed people to go and visit your businesses and, shop there. So at the very least, you have financially benefited from your work, promoting.
So what exactly? How does this work? Step me through it. What do they do?
I'll step you through it. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, step me through it.
Okay, you have a brewery in China, correct?
Yes, I have a brew pub. Yeah.
Yes, and China Daily is a Chinese government-controlled media organization, correct?
When did they write about me? When was that article from?
I've seen it.
When? I'm asking you the date because I've been covered for craft beer about 5 or 6 years ago as well. One that had way before I did any content. So did they do that in anticipation that I would make these videos 5 or 6 years later?
Well, just Google it. Google it now, Chris. Find the articles about the brewery because I've seen them.
Go ahead. And then let's step through how this works logically.
I don't know if I'm able to.
So just to say, the specific claim about the billionaire in the U.S., you've abandoned that now, right? That claim you've abandoned.
I'm not necessarily abandoning that.
Okay, so you're holding on to it, but what are you holding?
No, what is we know that you do have links to that kind of ecosystem of tankies, don't you? You're close to people like the Grey Zone, and they have been directly funded by them. So it wouldn't be a big surprise if you have been funded by this guy.
So you're guessing. So you put a factual statement out based on a guess.
Daniel,
is that correct?
All the people.
Is this how you do your research on China? Also, is this the veracity of your claims when you talk about your friends in Xinjiang as well?
Daniel, it's fucking obvious, mate. Because all the people you hang out with, your entire propaganda ecosystem, have been funded by the same guy. So it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility that you've been funded. It's very obvious. I mean, at the very least, as I said, Chinese state media have promoted your businesses in China. You have financial.
You're not.
You have financial.
We can take this. We can.
One sec. Drew, we're gonna let Daniel respond. Daniel's don't ask another question, but Daniel, do respond, and then it's back to me. Go, Daniel.
Okay, so I want to ask a question. What we've seen here is that Drew cannot support what he said about the billionaire fund. All he can say is, I have friends who probably are paid by them, which means I'm probably paid by them also. That is the most ridiculous bullshit I've ever heard in my life. And if the same quality goes into his conclusions, because he put that out as a conclusion, he said, it turns out the same billionaires that fund these people fund Daniel also. That's what he said. He put it out as a factual statement. And now you can see he doesn't actually have any evidence of that. He has a hunch. And I want people to keep that in mind when you consider the quality of his research in relation to China as well. So that is abandoned. Now we can move on to the Chinese Chinese government funding. I'm happy to move on to that now.
Hold on. Let me try and reframe a lot of what everyone's trying to say here. Right? Just there's a lot to unpack here. This is a topic I'm not fully across. I went to a campaign. I saw a violent incident happened in an area that I regard as part of my community. I have friends in the area. Amazingly, Chinese friends that I care quite a lot for. We saw a sign that was widely regarded as something that was that something could be offensive. But at the same time, in Australia, where we don't have that same, we have a different perspective to other places in the world where we tolerate signs that might be offensive because the freedom of speech is more important, and that's what we're trying to uphold. And throughout the rest of this, between Daniel and Drew and everyone else, we're now into topics which are beyond that, because I started this because Daniel posted a video that I still regard as just disinformation, wrong, doctored. I know Daniel doesn't agree with that, but we're now trying to navigate what is true beyond that. I normally just cover protests, something fairly simple, and I ask people simple questions, which is, tell us why you've come. And I've ended up with a video of me portraying me as highlighting things that just weren't true. And for me, that's where we get to. We've got violence, we've got an offensive sign, a sign that may be offensive, and we've got information that's being skewed. We'll say just everyone's trying to skew things in the different ways, but one that I've identified and broken down is not just is misinformation.
Can I say something? Let me read this out. How can Hua Chunying, the spokesperson of China and the director of the Foreign Ministry Information Department of China, use a Canadian citizen, Daniel Dumbrill, to speak of current affairs in mainland China during a press conference? I mean, we know that you've been directly promoted by the Chinese state and Chinese state media, Daniel. So you're telling us.
How do people know from that? How do people know from that I own a brewery? When they grabbed one of my videos off of my YouTube channel and posted it, they actually posted multiple YouTube videos, not only mine. How do people then, like, what happens? Then people fill my 30. So then people fill my 35 seat. 2017 is the China Daily article.
So a Communist Party news outlet with a following of tens of millions promoted the business of someone who happens to defend Communist Party policies against minorities. Interesting. That is pretty interesting.
2017.
So
2000.
What?
So they knew.
Maybe it's that you did benefit a lot from this system because these people, this system. Maybe you were enriched by the political system.
Let me, Daniel, I'm going to ask Drew a question. Drew, hold on. Drew, I'm going to ask you a question.
Hold on.
Daniel if Daniel does own a brewery, where's that going? So Daniel opens a brewery.
Wait. I can explain to you. He says I got my brewery promoted in 2017, and somehow they knew that 2 years later or 3 years later I would start vlogging about the Hong Kong protests or something like that. I mean, this is the mental.
Actually, make my claim. Can I make my claim? No. It's more. Even if it's not, Daniel, it could be as simple as this, right? It could be as simple as you made.
Break it down for us.
As a Western expat in China, someone who's able to use a VPN, which obviously puts you in a quite privileged position in China because, a lot of people.
You think only people with privilege use VPNs in China? Okay, yes, this is really important.
It is actually illegal in China. So as someone who
this is really important context for everybody to hear that Daniel, you think that this is a privilege.
As a privileged Western expat in China, as a privileged Western expat in China, and your businesses have been promoted by Chinese state media, and obviously you've made a lot of money under that system. I mean, of course you want to defend it. So even if it's not direct.
Okay. So I'm not. It's like a butterfly effect or trickle down or something like that. It's like, I remember that time that China Daily wrote an article for me, and somehow, I mean, does the benefit of that article how many views did that article have, by the way? Like 1,000 or 2,000?
You actually got flown to Xinjiang basically by the Chinese government to make those propaganda videos.
I paid that for myself. No.
It was promoted by the Chinese
government. Wait. Okay, where's your evidence? I booked the hotel myself. I paid for the hotel. I paid for my own flights.
Okay,
I went around by myself.
Okay, post it
What's
all
that?
up. Post up all the receipts then.
No. It's the onus is on you. The onus is on you to tell me what.
Prove to everyone that
No,
you're
it's not.
not.
No, it's not. It's just like the claim about the billionaire.
Wait, hold on, guys.
You're promoted by Chinese state press. You got paid by them.
There's some noises. All right. We started this.
You know what? I've made my point. Yeah, listen. I got to go. I've been here a long time. I've made my point here.
You don't have an explanation.
I've made my point here. I've shown. Can I just? Yeah, I finished. I've successfully demonstrated here that he made a claim about the billionaire fund in the U.S. without any actual evidence. He's putting out all of these claims that 2017 I was promoted by Chinese state media, and that's why I make the videos I make now. He thinks I'm in it for the money, and I've never opened a Patreon account. Most of my videos don't even have actual the monetization turned on, while Drew is asking for money at almost every single turn. So if anybody here is doing it for money, you could make a much better case that Drew is. The idea that the Chinese government ran an article on me in 2017 and my 35-seat brew pub has been filled ever since then to sustain me making videos, and that's what drives me. And I don't ask for any money from my funders, and that's to him means that I'm
literally been promoted by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Like, how clear
promoted?
You have been promoted.
Okay,
like,
and so every video they've used, you think, like, what happens? They give a compensation. Like, what? Walk me through it, because I'd like to know.
I don't know the exact ways that these networks of,
No, of course you don't. You don't know much of anything, because all of these claims are unfounded.
There's patronage going on there. There's clearly patronage going on there.
Can I bring it back to being that I'm the host, and thank you for joining us, Daniel. I know I'll ask this. Hold on, Drew. Just. Daniel, how does any of the last hour, and thank you for joining me and having a chat, justify the edit that you coordinated of my video that I feel was way out of bounds, untruthful? Leave it to you.
All of the words in that video were truthful. It included the context that was never included, including the pieces of where you were, that it was a predominantly Chinese community, what the sign actually said, and that what the people were saying that they were upset about. If you're unhappy with the video, I mean, you're free to be unhappy about the video. You're free to be unhappy about the person who grabbed you from behind. I am too. I don't think he should have done that. But I think you should be equally unhappy that you guys walked away from that and you didn't truthfully represent the story. You completely ignored the people who clearly said they were offended by those vulgarities, and you pointed it as purely a Chinese nationalist problem. And you seem to fail to appreciate the implications that has for the Chinese Australian community amidst a rise in anti-Asian hate crimes. You say I make it all about race, but unfortunately that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a time period where there are people who feel a lot more targeted. I opened this up talking about the high school student who I had a 2-hour chat with in Australia, who is deeply depressed by the environment for Chinese Australians. And it's the kind of thing, like, he will see this video of me talking about that, about these kids who are depressed with this, and they'll see Drew doing this, because the truth is he actually doesn't give a shit about them. And that's why he didn't mind painting that entire crowd as a CCP, a Chinese nationalists, or whatever it is he called them, and completely ignoring all of the people who said they were offended by the vulgarity over and over and over again. There is no excuse to silence those voices. There's no excuses to paint them all with a single brush, even if that guy was pro-CCP. And as a matter of fact, if they were not pro-CCP, I can imagine why some people would also still be scratching their heads about Drew's little publicity stunt that he did there.
Let me say this, Chris.
Yeah, that's...
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Chris,
okay.
You don't care about Uyghurs facing genocide. So you don't listen to their stories. You basically do this over there. You actually deliberately lie about them. I mean, you're spitting in their face. So you claim that I'm so disrespectful because I did this while you're talking. Mate, you spit in the face of Uyghurs every single day. You spit in the face.
You've never been to Xinjiang, and the organizations that you support.
You have the mystical key to
unlock. You know what? This is actually really important.
Because you went to the place.
This is really
goes to the fucking Potemkin village.
This is really important now.
You know how in World War II the Nazis put up their fake concentration camps to show the world how beautiful and nice it is? I mean, that was basically your tour of Xinjiang. You saw the happy, smiling minorities that the CCP trucked out for you. So good for you, mate. Good for you. Keep doing this.
What are you talking?
You go
what did I see?
The CCP provides you a stage-managed tour. You see the smiling, dancing minorities. Look, everyone, there's no genocide. Everything's great.
Where did I post any smiling, dancing minorities? I was sitting down in barbecue places having conversations with locals. A lot of the
secret Oriental mystical knowledge, because you've been on the ground in the place that no other journalist is allowed to go.
And you haven't. And the veracity of your conclusions can be evaluated by the claims that you make against me, including with that billionaire organization. That is everything that anybody needs to know about the veracity of your claims and the quality of your research. And the organizations in Australia like ASPI who are taking away real jobs from Uyghurs based on false accusations, that's what drives me, is that this bullshit propaganda that you're pushing out is actually having...
They took away the slave jobs, mate. This is so sad. They took away the slave jobs.
No, guys, can we try and get someone with a... Can we find a way to just...
So when Nike
can't exploit Uyghurs and fucking slaves.
All right. I'm muting both of you. I've muted both of you. We need someone to have I know that was a lot of back and forth. Everyone needs to go. We've had a 1 hour chat. No, you need to go. Yep. Daniel, please give us a thank you and
goodbye. I just gotta go.
Thank you.
I don't want to say too much. I don't want to go because then it's not fair because he wants to respond to me and it goes back and forth. All I say is evaluate the veracity of his claims based on the claims. Dan,
thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
That's it.
Yep.
Right, just use that.
Okay.
Just use that.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. I know you want to reply to what he has to say. Say, Drew, go reply what he has to say. Nope, he's dropped off too. Okay. Sad part is, given what Dan did today, he's probably going to cut this up, and that's just how it goes. I don't think Drew got owned. I think he got hot under the collar. I don't think he got owned. Drew did go looking for a reaction, and he got a reaction. That's part of a protest. You hold a protest to get a reaction. Daniel, through this entire conversation, seemed absolutely obsessed about race. This is a conversation about more than just me being violent, me receiving violence, or about anything else. Dan added what he feels is context, but I regard as doctoring. He didn't portray this as a reaction video. He didn't come on and said, hey guys, just reacting to this guy's stream. He posted what was an entire cut of what he had throughout, and you can see the different colors for all the different cuts he put together. And he added things that weren't there, that any reasonable person would see wasn't there. Any reasonable person thought it would have been, and removed my watermark, which was a smoking gun. Could have done better. He regards it as context. Why did you have 1,000 white knights? Always about race. It's not about race. It's not about race. He completely missed. It's not about race. It was just a phrase. And that's where we come back to where Daniel was saying that he was very upset about the translation. I think there's fair criticism to be said. I think the sign was not fairly translated, and I tried to, and that was a mistake by my part. Try and translate it. Whoa, not going to try and translate things again. Going to refer to someone else to try and get that and outsource that because I don't speak the language. And I tried to translate something that I didn't speak the language. Relied on something that wasn't there. It comes back to where I say that it because of truth. Drew's translation may have been wrong. Yep, fair criticism. And that may not have been true. Daniel's cut up of me was doctored. When you tag New South Wales Police, you're making this and suggesting that it's evidence. And then to miss that this is about white knights and thinking that it's about white knights, not white knights, and to add that and edit that in after you've already made... I think it was wrong. Drew admitted he made some mistakes. Let me rephrase. Drew admitted that he would have done things differently. That's good. Protests are hard, guys. It's not always perfect all the time. It's not. It's hard. It's hard getting things right. At the same time, I also don't think that he needs to be purged because his sign may have been too offensive. Maybe it was too offensive, and the courts will assess that. The courts will assess that, and maybe the court of public opinion will as well. And if people judge his sign to be offensive, well, so be it. Does that justify violence? But it comes back to why I started it. Dan added what he calls context. It wasn't true. If context isn't true, it's not context. You're doctoring things that weren't there. When you're adding things that weren't there before, you might call it context. Context would be something like this. Me talking to you saying, hey guys, I found this thing up here. I want to tell you about that. This is context. Me, I'm context. See my hair? Context. Around me telling you about the thing happening up there. Putting in a 3-second clip. Oh, I didn't have time for it. Oh, great. Okay. Circling people that were violent. He sees these people that I was circling as Chinese. I see them as people who were violent. Again, race. Translation. Fair argument. Fair discussion to have there. Don't know. Race. I don't know if those two have been on stream before. It didn't seem like it. But I will say, maybe it's not Daniel and the Chinese community for making about race. Maybe we're missing something. I've seen this before. Maybe he didn't understand me. Maybe he did. But I did another video about it, and we ended up with the same thing. I've asked a few people, and it roughly translates to it. I think Dan made it about every other issue than what I had him on to talk about. I think Dan made it about the translation and didn't make it what he did. I think Dan made it about genocide funding, and there's a lot of other topics to go through. It wasn't about this. This was wrong. This was not context. People call it misinformation. You tagged New South Wales Police in it. That means something. That means something. There's a lot of points Dan made that would be fielded. You're going to look at Drew getting hot under the collar through it. Everyone was. This was a confrontational discussion, and it was difficult to stay cool. I think both did what they could. Because the words on the sign are somewhat justified, you can assault me. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Carter. Words of violence. It's offensive. And that's what happens. When it's something that you want to change the topic away, you call it needing context. You want to change it back to what you want us to keep it on the topic that you're talking about, it becomes whataboutism. Don't punch people even if they call you a MF. False information. You know what I can say about Dan? I'm not sure he was always this passionate about where he is. I think along the way he's been driven mad. I think along the way, through social media and the conflict we're having between US and China, he's just been driven mad round the bend. And everything is conflict. And he's starting to see conflicts that aren't there. With the leaders, they probably are. But I think he's just reached the point where it's just all so much, and there's always conflict in every corner. And he saw my video, and he saw an enemy. And when you see an enemy, you do whatever you need to assert your point. Because we've all got different glasses that we see the world through, and the glasses that Dan sees the world through, race and ethnicity. Or at least one of it anyway. And maybe the challenge isn't that we're saying, oh, you need to stop seeing it about race. Maybe he's saying that we need to accept that he sees it about race and that other people see it about race and we don't. And we need to start seeing it about race, and we need to start seeing race in our race-colored glasses at all times. Maybe. Again, it misses the entire point of what this was about. Disinfo, what he created was wrong. It was false. He'll call it context and I call it false. And there you go. We're looking at the context versus whataboutism. I want to keep it coming back to the topic I want to talk about. Some guy who took a video I made, cut it up, added frames that weren't there, added info that wasn't there, and turned it into something that it wasn't. I'll call anything else but whataboutism. No. Talking about genocide is whataboutism. I want to talk about what's happened to me. All of this is a topic bigger than us. I think it's good for us to talk to each other. I could be wrong about that. And in many cases, I'm generally wrong about it. Most of this conversation will be cut up out of context by a team that's more powerful than me, that has more money and a larger following. And in the coming days, if not weeks, I'll probably see a video. If this was any indicator of me cut up on Daniel's video, on Daniel's page, that will be not what happened tonight. And no one will have the time to go through it because this video is an hour and a half long and his video will be only 6 minutes long. Oh well. It isn't always important to me to necessarily be popular with another person or out there. I quite like the people that have ended up following me. You're trying to find truth. You're trying to find something more complicated. And maybe people look at this and they say it's just, ideological virtue signaling, that it's about long-form, uninterrupted live streams. It's hard. Yeah, he probably did. I think Dan did too. That doesn't make it an equal point there. Retracting or substantiating them. Something Drew is missing and could find some more work to do is to build out the polished explainer videos. And that's something that Dan has with his, quite in terms of production value, is remarkable. It's really good production value of what he's got here. Drew doesn't have that. Drew is street activist, right? He cares about the issues and he uses his passion to drive his goals forward. What Dan does is creating complex breakdowns is something that Drew just can't match. And a large part of that, I got to say, is funding, technical skill, building networks, all of these things that come together. Drew's trying to run for parliament as a transition from an activist to parliament. The journey that you're talking through there, Alistair, is actually remarkably hard, and it comes back to me over here. Once a claim is made, trying to refute it is remarkably expensive. This video, which is only 3 minutes long, a fraction of the people who saw this, of the thousands of people who saw this, will ever see this. A fraction of it will. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because each group will keep going their other way and use this ammunition against the other. Thank you, Louise. I know you mean the best, but this is also a little bit about reputation. This isn't just a random claim. This was a splice together of something that wasn't there. And I know we're getting back to, but someone is wrong on the internet. But it means something. Yeah, there will be. Promoting hatred against... I didn't hear. It's only white people who fail to see the conflict everyone else sees. Maybe that's true. Other people identifying that that this is about ethnicity and race and ethnicity and race. And here it seems like European Australians are sitting here being like, oh, it's not about race. when we're just not listening. We're just not listening. We're listening and believing? No. Misinformation, Adam. Last video. Misinformation. These frames did not exist in my video. They were inserted in. I did not insert a photo of white knights to represent white knights. Other guy calls it context. Nope. Context is a video like this where I say, hey guys, I just want to tell you and show you something else, where you make that clear. That's context. When you insert it in, it's doctoring. It's doctoring. It's misinfo. I didn't add this in. He did. And I will catch Daniel up on something, all right? Daniel did catch a couple of things on Drew, and Drew did backpedal and say, if I had my turn again, I would have written the sign differently. Good. If your goal is just to go out there and create offense, that's bad. I don't think that's what Drew wanted to do. I didn't see that. I saw Drew trying to draw attention to an issue. And Drew backpedaled and said, if he had his time again, he would have written the sign differently. Nice. We all want to barrel through when you have a violent incident. Nah, man, don't barrel through. Don't barrel through. Nah, man, don't barrel through. When I have a violent incident, I walk away and I'm like, oh man, I feel like a failure when violence comes to me. I really do, because I don't want to become the violent incident. I don't want to become the story, right? I always walk away and I'm like, is there something different that I could have done? I don't want to be the guy. I want to film the incident. That's my job. Oh, you're a paparazzi, blah, blah, blah. You're a paparazzi. Don't be a paparazzi. It's my job. I chase stories. Like with the Aussie Cossack. Mate, you chase the story. To say that I should just go to black and not be here. Not here. For a lot of people, I'm their eyes and ears of something that's happening out there. Also because there's often another camera on that topic. Because if I hadn't filmed that event, do you think, now given what we have seen here, that another video of what happened wouldn't have been posted? From a different camera angle? Because there were hundreds of cameras there. Okay, maybe not hundreds. There were many cameras there. Would anyone else here have not filmed the event? Camera. And that's where we come back to. It's all about the edit suite. The edit suite is what makes the truth. And in this case, it didn't just bend the truth. It was a lie. He could have cut this up in a few different ways, right? Added some subtitles and everything else like that. Yep. Honestly, Dan, you would have been with. I understand your concerns, right? Of that this was an offensive sign just there to trigger people in the street. Why not do it at the embassy? Fair point. Drew, why didn't you do it at the embassy? There you go. All right, good. Nothing to do with the fact that, Dan, you edited this something that wasn't true. Drew said he'd do something differently. Now, could you imagine that kind of exchange? And you'll put up a video without inserting frames and said, Drew, you went to a residential area. You should have done this at the embassy. I think it's wrong. I would have hoped, and I think Drew would be like, oh, yeah, probably could have done that better. Instead, we have just all of the drama. Drew says he could have written the sign differently. I think he could have done it at the embassy, and it would have been, I think, actually maybe a more powerful message, plausibly. Cool. But this wasn't anything about that. Let me have a look at a few others. Oh, yeah. 20% of Australia was born in Australia. I think it's actually... But anyway, regardless, just because you're Chinese doesn't mean that you support Xi Jinping or China. And that's something that I've learned as well. Lydia Trudeau. Yeah, Trudeau's... A lot of people have got some questions there. Why do I take myself so seriously? I don't know. I'm trying to walk you guys through a difficult situation. You got anyone else trying to talk through this? because we can just do this current affair style, which I don't really like, which is and clip it up into 3 minutes. Many of you have been sitting here for 2 hours trying to decipher this. Thank you. Thank you. Because this is hard. This is hard. I am the victim. Oh no. Thanks, Evelyn. I did try. I hope that he's just, having lived in China, just been driven mad by the, and this is true, a lot bevy of anti-China stories that come out. Are they justified or not? Actually isn't part of the story. Actually isn't part of the story. It's just the wall-to-wall sometimes issues. Of course, I'm talking pre-COVID. Post-COVID, wow, things changed there. Yeah, true. Promoted a conspiracy, powerful team promoting it. What? Wow, talk about it, whatever it is. He's got a team of video editors, and that's okay. But he's got a team that is able to produce this. He said himself, I told them to add that in. And that was, can I identify something? The fact that that Daniel answered the question, and we'll assume, honestly, that he answered the question, that he told the editors to do it. Call it a slip if you like, but it was an insight. Maybe he was answering honestly, and that was a sign that he's trying to answer questions, which is a good sign, rather than just deflecting back to race and whatever else it is. All right, let's how to say good day. Oh wow, there's a lot of comments. I'm going to skip to the bottom and then work my way back with the what it is, CCP, etc. Yes, very good at hiding evidence. Yeah, you met the Democratic Party. We all try to. Drew tried with the consulate, with the Russian consulate the next day, flopped. Yeah, look, trying for a reaction, it's something he cares a lot about. It's up to us to decide whether the action is good in that way or not. Chris is trying to distract from the greater issue. He cut up the video I would call doctoring. This credibility is so important, and it's so hard because it draws into question everything else you're saying. And Dan, it was a step too far, man. You could have just, without these frames, said this. You see, when you see this area here, you could have added this because this is clearly not mine, but you didn't. You left my face in, and you made it look like I'd had it in. This is you adding context. This is not. Right side, clearly adding text, subtitles. This, with my face in the corner while I'm speaking, is not adding context. So, trying to distract? Yeah, this is about me. This is about my topic, and I'm going to call anything else whataboutism. Maybe you should have had a different sign. Maybe you will. But that's the journey of free speech. Sometimes you get it wrong. And I hope lots more people do get it wrong and change what they do. Drew has said, because of this reaction, if he had his time again, he'd do things differently. Drew has changed. What more do you want out of people? He's changed what he's going to do. I was hoping to get to a point with Dan where he might, would you have done things differently with this edit? I hope he will. This is context, mate. This is context. Nice work. This ain't. See how my photos, the videos in the corner? This ain't. Go ahead. You could add this. Go ahead. We know that it's something that you've added. Here we don't. So I hope Dan has changed in that side, but wow, it's a whack on the nose for credibility. It's a whack on the nose for credibility. Yeah, that's me. I know, you don't get what happened because it was a lot. It was. No, it wasn't obvious. My photo's in the corner, a photo's been added, my watermark's been removed. Nope, it wasn't. Yeah. Lol, that's a laugh. I guess you then get to the question of, do you trust your own government when it comes to something like that? No, look, I just hope I get with this angle. I get what Dan's trying to do here, and to try and add context. My hope is that he just doesn't do this to people, because that is, you can have debates about which political party is wrong or way to do things, etc., etc. That was a frying pan, and it's one I hope I don't have to get back into. I'll just cover some local nice protests about healthcare, maybe. This kind of international relations stuff is heavy. At the same time, I do want to know what the local community of Eastwood thinks about free speech. Unfortunately, it seems that the only way to do that seems to be people making a complete scene. If you're going to go and hold a sign there, maybe you should just hold a sign, then start with something simple. Xi Jinping bad. Okay? And work your way up rather than starting at the top. All right. That's enough. I'm going to have something to eat. It's late here. Dan, I'm glad you came on. Dan, I also think what you created was a doctor video. I hope you don't do that again. Dan, you had some good points towards Drew. Drew had some good points towards Dan as well, which Dan was trying to distract from. I hope everyone through this has just found a moment to try and wind down. I don't know if the two of you been on together. I hope I was able to moderate some of your interaction well. Fairness is hard. I'm naturally going to be a little bit biased against Dan, having created that video to begin with, which I just thought was completely dishonest. And Drew said he's going to do things differently in future. Good outcome. Good outcome. What else do you want but change? I think too often we chase after people and say, you're sinner. You must be purged from society forever because of your sin. Drew said it'll change when you do things differently. You got it. That's kind of the best. That's why we normally throw people in jail for years to try and get them to change. Thank you for watching during this epic 1 hour and 40 minute, or plus the other hour beforehand, 2 hour and 40 minute. Jump in the comments. Let Dan know what you think. Find me a video editor so that I can make edits the same way Dan would. To make his kind of edit would have taken me weeks. He's turned it around so quick. And he's got a much nicer video setup than me. I don't have a key light. All right, enough. I'm rambling. Thanks for the kind messages, everyone. It's helped. It's helped.